Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining. This is Seeking Sustainability Live number 50. We have hit 50. Woo! Very
Yeah, I'll go with that for my
exciting.
age.
Yeah. We have Kit with us today. Thanks so much for joining us, Kit.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That's awesome. Do you want to just start by briefly introducing yourself?
I'm Kip Pancoast Nagamura, and I'm a haiku poet, photographer, and I don't really want to say journalist. That doesn't exactly describe the Backstreet Stories, but it's a column I write for the Japan Times, which covers the area, the people who live there, different neighborhoods in Tokyo, and with a focus on people who do individual businesses, craftspeople, the people that are outside of the chain store kind of vibe.
Yeah,
They are the things that make Tokyo as exciting as it is.
I love that. We'll talk more about your work a bit later. I love that about your articles, how you always focus on people that you meet along the way, and you point out not only the history, but the culture that you understand from being a long-term resident of Tokyo and studying the culture and everything. Fantastic.
I just learned that there's a French word for what I've been doing, and it's flaneur, and it's someone who makes a social commentary as they walk around. It flaneur just sounds somehow not very elegant. It sounds a little weird, but I think that's
Flaneur.
probably what I'm doing.
No, I like that.
Yeah.
That's nice. Yeah, and that's it. I think walking around, talking about your insights also goes into on your website. You talk about doing backstreet tours and
I do.
off the beaten track tours, right?
Yes. I think I've done that for about 10 years now, and it's strictly by word of mouth. I don't put out any advertising at all. And last year, before the virus struck us, I had no free days at all. I literally worked every single day of the year.
Wow.
Not entirely on giving tours or anything, but otherwise, it was very, very busy.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we have a comment from Mike Ferguson. He says, a long
Oh,
belated greeting. Thanks.
yay!
Thanks for joining us, Mike. Of course, you're a very talented photographer, and I think your photography alone speaks louder than words. But when you
Mhm.
combine your photography and your haiku, it's a really amazing combination, which we'll introduce a bit later. But do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, there's been a miniature civil war going on in my brain, and that is between the visual and the literal or the words. And when I was at Brown University, for example, I had to choose a major to graduate, and I couldn't choose between those two. So I actually made what's called a dual degree in both. And it took a lot of convincing. The deans of the university got tired of seeing me show up, and so therefore I think they gave in. And then they said, okay, you can get a dual degree. But those two elements are very important to me. My parents were both artists. My father was an architect and landscape architect, and my mother was a woodblock print maker. And both of them were so attuned to nature that it seemed a shame to not pick up on my love of haiku and carry that through words as well. It seems unfair, perhaps, to use both together. Sometimes I feel like, oh, that's a jack of all trades and master of none kind of thing that you can fall into. But eventually, when I hit 50, I said, just forget it. That's what you do. Go ahead and do it. Don't worry about what people have to say about it. So,
No, I think you're allowed to say that that's what you do because you have demonstrated through photo books and photo haiku books and selling your photographs on their own that you're very accomplished. And yeah, that's what you do. Embrace it. I love it.
Do you ever feel, Joy, when you're walking around that you see something and you're walking with someone
Mm-hmm.
and you want to say to them, look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And they do very briefly, and then you move on. But what you really wanted to say was, look at
Yeah.
this. Really look at it. And you can't do that or you're going to lose friends by the thousands. But you can take a picture of it in the from the angle that you actually saw it, from the depth or the proximity. And then if you write about it, it tends to linger. So
Yeah, beautiful.
yeah.
And that's so true. And I think a lot of the things that we'll show in your work later, it's not just about the beautiful traditional, it's often about the wabi-sabi or the broken down, and beauty is everywhere and everything is interesting. And that's shown in your haiku as well as your photography. I love that.
Thank you. Well, a lot of haikus sounds a sad bell, if you know what I mean. But it's coming to grips with the ephemeral, the fast fading, the brevity of our lives. We don't think of our lives as terribly brief, and the when we're during this lockdown period, a day can seem infinitely long. Um, but also it can seem as short as a breath. Our sense of time has been shifted by staying at home and thinking about our lives in a different way, I think. But I think haiku poets in particular look at mayfly, for example, that only lives a day or two. And if you inhabit that part of nature, you realize that you as well will pass. So a lot of people write poems on that feeling.
And it's healthy, to think about how our time is short. It sounds dark, but I think coronavirus has certainly made us all think about it more carefully. Is that what are you doing with your time that you have, that you're healthy, that you're energetic, and how are you making it mean something to you
Mm-hmm.
as well as maybe to others, but at least to you, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I got this quote from a website that was showing a lot of your work, Tori Izaka Art. They had
Uh-huh.
a lot of your beautiful photographs. And it says her work, separate from her regular journalist pieces, delves into mono no aware.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do you want to
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit?
Oh, yeah. It's a kind of how can I say, fast and easy way to explain the depth of perception that you have, a feeling of connection with something that you see. So that when you see a mayfly, for example, your knowledge of it lets you know that it has a limited time, and so you look in on it and you see its actual being, and in a funny way become one with that being. So I tell people that if you become a haiku poet, it's not learning a form, it's learning a form of life, a way of living, a way of seeing things, a way of interacting with them. This is not to say that I spend every day rushing out to the garden and looking at the mayfly. I don't just do that. But it changes how you live, how you organize your day, how you perceive things. Um, and that mono no aware is the perception, the real perception of something.
Yeah, beautiful.
It's a
Morgan FJP says brilliant photographer. Thank you, Morgan.
Oh, wow. Thank you. My God, I didn't realize I was going to get a compliment here and there. I feel so happy.
Yeah, we'll
Thank
get
you.
comments and questions along the way. I'm showing right now a screenshot from your book, Shiki, that you
Oh, yeah.
have your photographs and your poems side by side. It's like a beautiful photo book. I
Thank
have the
you.
page open. In spring rain, our breath visible beneath the shrine roofs.
That was a beautiful day, and actually I had taken a couple of people to see a shrine just outside of, well, it's within the Tokyo limits, but it's one that a lot of people don't seem to visit very often. And I it was freezing cold, The people who go on tours with me, we go no matter what the weather is. And that's that, most people have been in amazingly good sports about that. Uh, and it's odd, but the days when the weather has been the worst is the ones that people remember the most sharply. I can remember one time taking a group around and we had horizontal hail and snow. And literally, we had umbrellas, but everything below the breast line was soaked. And about 10 minutes into the tour, this is not a good advertisement for me, but I realized we had gone the wrong direction. I'd literally been blinded by the weather. But then I had an internal conversation with myself, and that was the way you find things when you're walking in the city is to go without a direction. Go with this direction that the weather has taken you. I'm trying to tell myself this to not panic because I don't want to tell everybody, okay, now we have to walk back in the bad weather 10 minutes. But we came across a shrine, excuse me, a temple, and the gate to it I had never seen before. And looking through, there were cherry blossom trees, weeping cherry blossom trees. All the petals were coming off with the snow and the hail. And all of us stood there with our mouths hanging open. We went into the temple and the priest said, "You crazy nuts, what are you doing out in this weather?" And I said, well, we walked 10 minutes in the wrong direction. And he said, "Let me make it the right direction. Why don't you come downstairs and meditate with me?"
Oh,
So
wow.
the group went downstairs to the monks' quarters and meditated. And I don't think we'll ever forget that day.
No.
But what a lesson,
Yes.
kind of let things happen.
Be in the
Yeah.
moment and
Right.
appreciate the moment for what it is, even if it's not what you expected, right?
Exactly, exactly. That's something that's very difficult for me to do. I really want to control it. I want to make it happen right. But today, for example, the light used to be really great, but now we're about to get a thunderstorm, so the light's really bad. Sorry, everybody.
No, no, that's
Bad
fine.
excuse for a photographer.
No, that's live streaming reality. We appreciate,
Mhm.
we're trying to embrace the moment with you talking in live stream, so don't worry.
Okay.
Morgan says, I like that in mono no aware, the last word is spelled the same as the English word aware.
Yes, yes. That's a brilliant observation. And I think it's one of the phrases that I hit upon for that reason. It felt partially familiar. Yeah.
So on the next page in this photo book, Shiki, which is beautiful, by the way, and I found it on a website where you can order it. Is that from the States?
Yes, and you can order it from anywhere. The site is Blurb,
That's
and
where I saw
all
it,
you
yeah.
have to do is look up my name and Shiki, which is spelled Shiki. It has many different meanings. Shiki, to people who know haiku, they might think of Masaoka Shiki, who in the late 1800s actually gave the form of haiku its name. Before that, haiku had been called hoku, but Shiki gave haiku its name, and its classification as a serious form of literature. He sort of redevised the description of haiku and then went with that. But the other meaning, of course, is the four seasons. Shiki also means four seasons. And then there's one other meaning, which is sort of a Buddhist meaning, which is to achieve consciousness, deep consciousness of something. Mono no aware is close to that idea.
Wow, wonderful.
Yeah.
And
So
the page I'm showing now has the white-eye bird and the cooking,
upside down?
yeah, upside down, yeah.
Yeah.
And do you remember that haiku or should I read it?
You better read it.
Okay, let me see.
And I think it's upside down with you anyway.
Yes, no, no, no. I can see the bird now. At first, I didn't see it, but I see it now. I love the white eye, by the way. What a gorgeous bird. We have that visiting our plum tree as well. So I was really happy to see this one. Flirtatious white eye finds plum blossom nectar upside down with joy. See,
Well,
that
that's
was
why you picked it, because
perfect
your
for
name
me.
is in there, upside down with you.
So
Yeah.
a haiku poet, do
Mm.
you do you think of these on the fly, or what's your work process? Does it just come to you, or
A lot of people want to know that, and I wish there were a systematic answer, but there isn't. Usually, when I take a picture, though, going through my mind is, why are you taking this picture? What's happening there with the white eye who's upside down and beautiful curled little body, that effort, so such beautiful effort. um, it was obvious why I was taking the picture, but I wanted to then put that into words, so there's that upside down with joy. um, but sometimes I take a picture that I'm not sure about and will go home and look at it. The ideal way, what most haiku poets are supposed to do, is to write on the fly as you're walking outside. And I've done that on occasion, and I try to do that more consistently because I feel there's no filter of intelligence that gets in the way, or no filter of how do I make this clever? How do I make this exciting? I don't worry about that so much if I'm outside and moving around. And I think you get a more crystalline um, vision that way. And you pay more close attention to what you're looking at. So
yeah,
the
wonderful.
amazing thing to me is, and I still consider myself a novice. I appeared on Haiku Master's show, but I said, please don't call me a master. If I don't think you become a master really until you're dead. Uh, but I worked with people I would call masters, actually, and I learned a great deal from them. But one of the things I went out to do was to buy what's called a saijiki. Saijiki is a dictionary of kigo. Kigo are seasonal words that are required in a haiku. This saijiki is about 1,700 pages long, and the print is so tiny you almost need a magnifying glass. And in it are acceptable kigo. But when you live in Tokyo, you realize that you have seen maybe 30 pages of kigo. That's it. Everything else has been covered up with concrete. So if you start to write haiku, you begin to realize that your haiku is going to be about the weeds growing between the concrete or the sidewalk. And actually, you find novice writers writing about that a lot. So you realize your human situation, and then you have to go out further afield to look for other things to write about. But I think in terms of sustainability, if everybody were required to write about something other than the weeds between the sidewalk stones, that we would have a world more tuned to and careful of what grows and what lives. Now, you think in the city, too bad, what can you do about it? Well, I have a small balcony, and on that balcony, I have now 300 or so different varieties of plants. Now, 50 of
300.
them, yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's a tiny balcony, and they're small pots. It's not huge fields or anything. And about 50 of those things are weeds, things that I didn't plant. But I realized one day that different kinds of bees liked those weeds. And some of the things were presents from birds, so I kind of let them stay. But that's in the middle of the city, with the airplanes going overhead, with the traffic everywhere. But in the middle of the city, I have 6 different varieties of butterflies. That's just normal. And they're caterpillars, and 8 different birds, including the white eye. We love the white eyes. The reason they kind of look like you, actually, a little bit, because they
With my
have that,
glasses.
yeah, the white circles around their eyes, and that gives them the most adorable cross-eyed look you ever saw. Sort of like, whoop. So, if you plant things, like a friend of mine, another Walsh. I don't know if you know John Walsh,
Hmm.
but he does a lot of urban farming, and he's brilliant at that. And you realize that it doesn't take much to sort of offer an oasis in your yard, in your garden, even donating to a local garden of some kind. makes all the difference in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Growing your own green space, even if it's something you don't eat, even if it's something just for beauty or decoration, can
Mm.
really enhance your mood. But also during coronavirus, when so many of us are stuck at home, it's so important for sanity, emotional and mental, right?
Right. When we chose our apartment, I said I don't care if the inside part is small, but I want the outside part to be significant so that I can green out anything else. My husband is marvelous in choosing exactly the right place.
Nice. That
Yeah.
works well. Let's talk more about your NHK series, Haiku Masters.
Okay.
Um, can you give us like a summary? What was the premise of the show? And you went to some amazing places. I saw the one in Yufuin,
Oh,
um, in Oita. You want to talk about that?
well, not about that one in particular,
Mm-hmm.
because the whole is probably more important than the individual parts in this case. But um, I was extraordinarily lucky to be included in this. And I think the show was set to be about photo haiku, which is exactly what I do. So I don't think they could have avoided putting me on it, even if they wanted to. And I think that they helped me learn so much. It was like hitting the ground running. It was a very professional team, so fun to work with. And we were soliciting poems from around the world. From 160 countries, we got poems. Who knew? I'm sure NHK had no idea how popular haiku is, and how this kind of was like throwing out a lifeline to some countries where there are one or two poets wondering, am I the only one? And we could say, no, not only are you not the only one, but what you're writing and what you're seeing is so fantastic. So it was visually exciting. It was great to talk about works from India, from Nigeria, from every country you can think of, just about Croatia, Romania. It just countries that actually, to be perfectly honest, one or two people on the crew had no idea where is that country. So we were building for ourselves a geographical map of the world and of poetry too. And it was great. I wish they hadn't canceled it. They did that, I think, or the reason I was told is because they wanted to film sports for the Olympics. So I don't know whether that will happen or not. I don't know what this pause in everything means to us right now, but I would love to do that show again.
It was
And you're right.
it was beautiful. I mean, the places you went to in the rural areas, the traditional houses and inns that you would sit in and have your discussions, the Japanese people that were in the show, as well as an international longtime resident, plus bringing in international haiku poets from around the world. So it's not only about Japan; it's more about the connection to Japan or the connection to Japanese culture and tradition and how it can be used in a modern sense. I was a big fan. I loved it. It was great.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you. And we went to some extraordinary places, and it's funny because I want to be on top of things before they happen, as you know, a little bit of a control freak, I guess people might say. Um, when we would go to a place I knew nothing about, I'd try to study it as much as possible. But meanwhile, we're selecting from 1,000 poems, and you have to choose a couple to go on the show, and they have to be the right mix of things, and they have to be the right season. And then everything came to me in Japanese, but I was supposed to speak English. So my brain was whipped at the end of a show, whipped. But um, Yufuin is one of my favorite places that we went to. BA in Hokkaido was another knockout. I can't say there's any place that I wouldn't go to again. I would in heartbeats.
The
But those
in
those are two standouts.
Yeah,
Mm.
in Tenji Temple looked really beautiful. Is that in
Oh,
Tokyo?
yes. And also Matsuyama. That was an important stop because Matsuyama considers itself the home of haiku because that's where Masaoka Shiki, was born. And even now, they have several haiku contests every year. So if you're a haiku writer, you should pay attention to that. The Setouchi International Haiku Contest. Setouchi is that area. If you look up Matsuyama Haiku Contest, you'll also find it, I think.
Yeah, great.
Yeah.
One of the things that I heard while listening to one of them reviewing for this talk today is how you were introduced to haiku at the age of 6.
Yes, I was. I was learning to read with the Dick and Spot books, Run, Dick, Run, Go, Spot, Go. That's what they were teaching reading with. And my grandfather, who is French, French Swiss, I should say, and also very interested in poetry, gave me a book of haiku. Now, this book was tiny, about this size, perfect for a child's hands. And it had a collection of shiki, basho, busong, all the major names in haiku were included in there with very beautiful illustrations in black and white sumi ink. And this was a world I had never seen before, but I was instantly sucked in. And I told myself, I want to do this. So by age 12, I finally had a haiku published. Looking back on it, I realized I didn't really know what haiku required. And there's a battle there, actually. Haiku, Shiki had this battle as well. Haiku are supposed to have a seasonal word, supposed to have a juxtaposition, supposed to be 575. A lot of people feel that. All of these rules are somewhat mutable. But I think you have to know where they come from, why they were rules to begin with, and then you decide which you will break and which you will not. But you will run up against contention. You have some of the biggest battles in the poetry world between haiku poets who believe one way or the other. And I don't want to say which is the right way or which is the wrong way, because I'm not as interested in that as I am in the poetry.
Yeah.
So if the poem works, good.
I thought it was interesting how in the foreword to your book about sports and haiku, which your most recent book, right?
Right.
You were introducing about the traditional style of haiku and how you might not keep to that traditional style, but you're trying to keep to the feeling of the traditional haiku style more. Do you want to talk
Right.
a little bit more about that?
Well, when you say traditional, I suppose you're probably referring to 5 syllables, 7 syllables, 5 syllables. The reason I don't go with that in English is because you end up with usually, not always, but usually an unwieldy long poem, a poem that doesn't feel like the single breath that a haiku requires. The reason is fairly simple. It's logistics, but Tokyo in English is 2 syllables. So you could put Tokyo and Kyoto in your first line of a 575 haiku, right? But if you're writing in Japanese, Tokyo is 5 mora, or what we think of as syllables. So you have to u kyo u. So you're done. Tokyo is the end of your first line if you're following 575. So you can see how easy it would be in English to overrun the number of syllables just because of the way we count syllables or sounds is different. And if you don't know that, you might fight for 575 tooth and nail. And some very fine poets do that, and some very fine poems come from that formula. So I always say, if that is that's what thrills you about it, stick to that. Absolutely. But very often the poems are a little bit longer than what I feel approximates haiku. Now, the other is kigo, and a lot of modern haiku writers eschew kigo. They say, we won't use it, we don't need it. And they make the haiku very much about themselves or about the city, it's understandable. You can see where those things come from. But for me, haiku is very much about connecting with something that is beyond me. Something I'm writing the poem already. I'm already there in a broad enough sense. So occasionally I use the word I, but not very often. And I want to pay attention to the seasons. Now, people will say, why? Why do you have to pay attention to the seasons? And I think it's because it's one of the few things that connects us these days. We don't read all the same books. We don't grow up with the same rules. We don't have any touchstone that goes across all countries so much as we do seasons. Now, seasons will be different country to country, understood. And the list of kigo that are acceptable country to country is bound to be different as well. But when you say drought, and that's a kigo, that's a seasonal word, drought, everybody has an image of it. There's a taste, there's a sound, there's a smell, there's a worry that's connected with that one single word. Now, to have that powerful tool at hand and not use it in a haiku seems to me kind of a waste.
Let's give an example. I borrowed this one from your Facebook post. I hope that's okay.
Okay.
Some boats tie up, others head out. Summer solstice. You've got a beautiful photograph of boats there. So you're using the seasonal word and an image that translates across cultures as well, right?
That's right. The summer solstice is really important in Japan. We also call it the equinox. And that equinox is a sense of one thing's happening and the other is happening at the same time. And there's a balance between them. There's a pull at that stage. And I just, when I saw the boats coming and going, I thought, oh, what day is it? Oh, yes, it's the equinox. That's perfect. That was just, as many haiku are, I would like to say that I struggle with them. And some of them I have struggled with, absolutely. And whether I've made them better or worse is anybody's guess. But the really good ones, I think, just come. They roll right up. There they are. And so people say, are you still writing? And I ask them, are you still breathing?
Good
Yeah.
response. So it's like maybe how any writer would feel if you're in the zone. It just comes to you. If you're somehow just perfectly aligned in brain and physical form to get it done, it would just come. And those would be the best haiku. Is that right?
I think so. I think the more you read, the better you're going to heighten your chances of producing work that isn't a copy, number one, but also is informed. And building on past traditions is another part of haiku. So you have to read a lot. You have to get out and try as well. Every writer I know will tell you, you face the blank page and you don't say, I have a writer's block. You just get about it. You work on it. You may throw it all away, but seriously, having some writing on the white page is a lot better than none, right? Yeah, I'm sure
Yeah.
you know
Oh,
this.
oh yes. Even when you're like writing for Japan Times, writing travel pieces. It's a very different kind of writing, but you have the same stumbling blocks. How do you get started? Where do you want your arc to be? All the traditional things you learn about writing. I've got another example here from your website, a beautiful black and white photograph of a wave
Oh, yes.
all day following the motion of the earth taken by a wave. It's
Yes.
gorgeous.
This is written actually quite a while ago, right after the tsunami.
Oh,
And so um, I didn't know how else to respond to that which was with all of us for so long and still is in many ways. It was a unfathomable tragedy. So
yeah,
mm,
powerful. So if you don't understand where you came from in that sense, you can apply it to your normal life, but understanding that you wrote that based on thinking about what happened in Tohoku seems even more, wow, powerful. You had some of the trips to Tohoku, didn't you, as the NHK travels?
Yes. Yes. One of the first NHK programs I did was a program on Matsuo Basho. And this was my first television program. And it came about because the director got a copy of Shiki and looked through it and got in contact with me and said, would you like to go on the Okono Hosomichi, which is the narrow road to the far north that Basho went on? And I said, are you kidding? Of course, I'd like to do that. And he said, it's for a Journeys in Japan program. What I misheard was I heard Johnny's in Japan. And Johnny's
The
are all
pop
these
group?
handsome young men,
Yeah.
the popular pop group. And he said, would you enjoy Johnny's in Japan? And I said, probably. I have never met them before. And he kind of tilted his head, like maybe my English wasn't so perfect. And I tilted mine, like maybe his Japanese was a little strange. And finally, I realized when he wrote it out for me that it was Journeys in Japan. But I just want everyone to know that I was saying yes initially to the boys' pop band. But
Of course. It would have been a different trip, but it would have been very interesting all the same.
yes. And on that trip, we stopped at the major places that Matsuo Basho stopped. And it was such an eye-opening experience to me. So many of the places have changed and others have remained absolutely untouched. But the difficult part of that was I had to read one of Basho's poems and then read one of my own. And it really, it felt impossible in some cases. I had to write them on the spot and then give an explanation of the poem I wrote. It was just, I felt like I was treading water the whole time. you know? I look back on them and I think they're not so bad. It was a good show, and if anything, it showed a master's work and someone who's giving it her best. That's me. So I I don't think I don't think most people who are really knowledgeable about haiku would even agree to do that show. So they got me just at the right moment, I think. Um, I
Yeah.
thought, yeah. The
Beautiful,
book,
some beautiful scenery. It looks like you were there in fall, or did you go a few times?
we went a couple of times. We had to go back and forth because it takes a lot of time to get up there, but each segment took a couple of days to set up. When you do a TV show, what you often don't realize is that for a 30-minute show, it's often 5 days of work. So most journeys in Japan are 5 days to a week on the road with people you don't know necessarily, with everybody at the top of their game. And you're expected to be at the top of your TV game too. But if you're new to it, you don't have TV game. The cameraman actually had to tell me how to walk. At a certain age, you think you've probably got that one sussed. But no, he said, walk at this pace. Can you do that? It's like, wow, I'm feeling so special here.
Well, let's shift gears a little bit because I want to dive into your Japan Times articles, which also ties into your guiding, which I find really interesting and so important as we move forward, the kind of guiding that's going to be possible in post-COVID.
Right.
Let's look. Japan Times Backstreets. I love this one on Ume, the finding thrills on Plum Blossom Hill.
Thank you. I People ask me how do I choose where to go, and I will admit that once or twice I've all but thrown a dart, and I've told myself there's going to be I can write about a brown paper bag and make it something you want to eat. If you write well, you can do that. But there have been one or two places that I've gone to, and I thought, I'm in trouble. I've chosen a wasteland. And then I'll walk it one day, I'll walk it 2 days, I'll walk it 3 days. Invariably, fairly close to the deadline, it opens up. It's like waiting for a flower to bloom. You simply cannot rush it. You can't pry the petals open. But I can remember walking in one area and thinking there's nobody here, there's nothing going on, and running into a guy that was rushing by with a bag and just saying, "Where are you going in such a hurry?" And he said, "To a miso making factory." And I said, "In this neighborhood?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Can I go see it?" He said, "Sure, come along." So I went, and the following day, spent the whole day working in the miso factory and failing as usual. He said, "The one thing you mustn't do is drop the plastic bucket in the 200-ton vat." And of course I did. So he goes, "Oh God." He had to put on this like full on wetsuit thing and go in and get the bucket. I couldn't believe it. But when you've got 50 kilograms and you're emptying it and you're trying to get it out of the bucket can leave your hands. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
I love that one about the ume, and I love how every single one of your articles you always highlight some of the local people, some of the local entrepreneurs running businesses. You talk about the history, you talk about the tradition, but you also talk about the modern conveniences like great places to have coffee, the wabi sabi. These are all,
Yeah.
so important when you're talking or trying to appeal to international visitors. How many times are you? Well, in Hiroshima, we meet a lot of visitors who've been here for 2 weeks. They're kind of tired of just the traditional. They would love to
Right.
have traditional with nature. They would love to have traditional with a good cup of coffee, right? Like
Right.
you have to balance those things.
When I get contacted by people, obviously they want very much like what you're saying. They've either read the Backstreet Stories or heard from a friend that I can help them see what Japan really looks like. And yeah, I listen to what they're interested in, though. It's very bespoke. So I don't plan ahead of time. And I also don't want to go back to specific places again and again and again, because I don't think it's fair to the people who are living their lives to do that. So I don't want to interrupt a craftsman constantly. Um, and some I'll actually pay a certain amount for just because it's their time. And others, usually my clients will buy something from them, but everybody makes it clear that is simply not necessary, that you don't have to do that. But most people, when they see how something is made, you know how that is, right? You're like, I've got to have that because now I get how hard that is to do, how long it takes, how beautiful it is, really.
Yeah.
So,
And when you introduce the whole world of handcraft, craftsmen, artisans in Japan, I don't find that when I travel to other countries. You don't have that richness of craftsmanship, and so that's a great point of appeal for Japan as a brand in general. And you can pretty much find it anywhere, right?
I think you can. Tokyo, people think, has been hollowed out by business and other concrete concerns, but actually the craftsmen are, many of them are still there, but they are their own ecosystem, and each craft depends on another craftsman. They are linked in ways that it's hard to explain, but it's deep. And the problem is, if one person disappears, if one of those craftsmen hasn't passed on what he knows or his techniques to an apprentice or something like that, somebody who will take over his name, it affects everybody else down the line. Um, I think in terms of I know of a lacquerware craftsman who is in his late 80s, but he can't get quality lacquer anymore from Japan, so he has to use a Chinese one, which is okay, but it doesn't have the same consistency. And the learning curve for him at his age is terribly difficult. And
Right.
then the people that used to decorate it with emaki are no longer around. They moved away. So he's left wondering, what am I doing? How do I make this work? So I would like to support craftsmen as much as possible, to show them how valuable what they do is. I'm sure they know that, but to reinforce that, to give the compliment that everybody needs somewhere along the line.
But I
And
think that's how you can use your position as a long term international resident to be a bridge to the outside world, that they know what they're doing is important, but to be able to communicate that to the outside world and to a wider audience, that's where you've got your skill set. And that's where you can really help them to
right,
connect with an outside audience. I love this one of the bathhouse, the innovation, the reuse of the old bathhouse in Shiba.
yes, the couple that I write about that have had their restaurant there forever, told me that their wedding anniversary had come up, and I said, so what? I asked the husband, what did you get her? And he looked at me like, what? I never get her anything. So I had been going through doing a little bit of a Marie Kondo of my apartment, sort of tidying it up, and I found this gold necklace that I never wear. And every time I wear it, I feel like I'm being garroted. So I brought it to him and I said, you should give her this. And he did. And she was just like, oh, I can't believe it. You know?
That's wonderful. But it
Yeah.
also just how you highlight in the article how they're reusing the bathhouse as a
Oh, that's right.
restaurant and,
Yeah.
renovating old places instead of tearing them down and making new. This is all so important. It doesn't seem traditional. It's not. It's innovation and it's using culture and tradition in a new way, which is relevant and which is
Right.
also very sustainable in terms of waste reuse. So I love that.
Yeah, there are a couple of buildings actually that need attention fast. They're real beauties and they're going to be torn down if we don't move. I have noticed though that sometimes if I feature an article, one of these places, there's a hesitation to tear it down. It gets some attention. But there's one in particular, an old bathhouse that is right in my neighborhood, and it's about 100 years old, and it's a great building, and it would make an amazing gallery or anything. Just please don't tear it down, man. You know,
Uh,
I become worried that people will see me as like the old building person or something like that. But because I like innovative and new stuff as well. And that combination is great. It's not always feasible, but I know that sometimes the old has to make way for the new. That's just how it is. Um, and the new can be beautiful and exciting and more relevant. But old architecture in Japan is made by hand and it's done so beautifully. And I would like to preserve every last bit of it that stands right now.
yeah, if possible. I heard a lot of places, the beautiful old tea houses, the beautiful old restaurants and inns in Kyoto aren't up to modern fire codes, so they're very difficult and expensive to renovate. But
Yeah.
I was talking to Dave in Osaka at his Seeking Sustainability talk about how Hard Rock Cafe and Starbucks are taking the existing buildings and renovating them. So there is innovation by major companies in Japan as well that see that the value of
Right.
reusing the tradition and the culture in a new way,
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm.
there is a lot of innovation, a lot of entrepreneurs doing really exciting things.
Also, there's the strength. Well, there used to be the strength in community movement as well. Uh, Occasionally, a house is slated to be torn down, and the community will say, "No, no, 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 no. We really can't survive or be the same without that particular building." But very often, it has to be grassroots. It's as if, in some odd way, the government doesn't see it, doesn't realize its value. And I wonder about that. I'm not sure why that is so prevalent here. I know that buildings are built that are meant to be taken apart. They are ephemeral, everybody knows. In a land of earthquakes, nothing lasts. But the wooden buildings that have been here for 100 years, let's give them another 100. They smell so good.
Oh yeah.
I know, I think that's one of the first things that hits me about a really beautiful old building is that smell of smoke from the irori and the smell of the damp timber. It's just so beautiful.
It is beautiful. And there are
Yeah.
some amazing architects who are using a lot of Japanese
Oh,
wood to build beautiful structures and rebuild buildings. So yes, more of that, please.
yes,
Um,
I agree.
we have 10 more minutes, so I really want to talk about your latest book. Can you give us an introduction of your book?
Yes, the latest book is Grit, Grace, and Gold. This is a title we hit upon by committee. I could have gone with just one word, maybe, but these are haiku that focus on sports, summer sports, the kind of sports that you would see in the Olympics. And the reason I started to write haiku about sports was not just because Haiku Masters got canceled for sports filming, but because I realized when I watch sports sometimes, this is kind of embarrassing to admit to the world, but I cry. The beauty of what humans can do is as beautiful as the arch of a tree, or the swift movement of a bird. It is when we are closest to nature, at the end of our breath, at the end of the strength of our muscles, we do something that is about our nature, our desire to be beautiful and strong and fast and elegant. And I thought, why not address that in haiku? Now, there's the problem with the kigo, and some of these work better than others, I think. But it was my task to pay attention to humans in sport and tie them into images in nature and put them together. And so that's what this book is about.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
And you were talking about a contest tied in with your book. Do you want to introduce that?
Oh yes, there is a contest at the moment. If you pick up the book or borrow it from a friend or get it from the library or ask me to photocopy you a page even, I'm happy to do that too. And write a response about one of them. What does it make you feel? What does it make you think about? Do you like it? Do you not like it? You can write a paragraph about that. You can paint a picture. You can write your own haiku in response. I have 7 prizes waiting for people. So please, the deadline is July 14th, Independence Day for the French, Bastille Day. Please submit them. Please send in work.
I thought I had some pages from your book. I'm not seeing them, sorry, but I've got the contest details here. And if you go to Amazon, you can leaf through the book and see some of the haiku. So even if you don't buy it, you can still join the contest, right?
Right, but remember, we poets are at the very, very bottom of the
Yes.
economic scale,
And it's
and publishers have really taken a hit during this time. So
definitely.
please, please, please
And
buy
it's
a
it's
copy.
a it's a beautiful book, and I love books that are so easy to read. So
Yes.
you can you can pick it up and you can read a bit and put it down, and it's something that'll stick in your head and make you think, and it's really, I'm ordering it myself.
Thank you. Well, if you know anybody who does sports in your family and you're looking for a gift, this would sort of hit that bell, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And it's just nice to think about the sports. Maybe we have the Olympics, maybe not. But at any rate, we do have this book. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, wonderful. And if people want to see more of your photography as well,
Yes,
the best place to go is Kit.
probably kitnagamura.com. And if you have a space on your wall that is yearning for a photograph, contact me through the same website, and we can actually, one of the most exciting things that I do is to go see the space that you have or look at a photograph of the space you have and work with you through my portfolio or through bespoke images that you can order. So for an anniversary gift, for example, a friend said, I want a picture of the house where I met my husband. and I want you to make an artwork out of it. And that was a thrill to do. She loved it. He loved it. And so that's one of the things that I do.
Nice. And
Thank you.
they're not only traditional images, you have a real variety of photographs that you've done over the years. Do you want to give people a general sense?
It's terribly difficult to do
Yeah.
that, I think, because that's why you take photographs, and why photographs and words are so vastly different. But I think that one category would be black and white images of people or moments in Japan. And the other category would be nature, sort of seen up close, but at an angle that's appealing. There's always some part of the story that you have to fill in. I think in my photographs, you look at it for a while, your eye travels around, and you bring yourself to it to complete it. Whereas most photographs, I think the ones that we look at and go, oh, yeah, are photographs that tell the whole story. It's all there. You don't have to work at it. But I think engaging someone is helping them to look at the world in a different way and engage in making the actual image come to fruition.
I love that. And I love all the colors and the juxtaposition. I love rust in good photographs. You know, I love the black and white. Everybody's going to have their own preferences, of course, for photography that they want on their walls or for special occasions. But
Right.
you've got a beautiful eye. You're very talented.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've been doing it for a long time and you know the angles in Japan. You think your length of time in Japan helps you get the right perspective for the photographs?
I think Japan is a visual country. It has more photographers than anywhere else in the world. So to make a mark in the photography world here, you have to be superb. But you also are looking at work all the time and training your eye and learning new things. And the photography community here is fairly tight. We keep tabs on each other and we learn from each other as well. But I think the obvious, you begin to notice what is the obvious, and you either choose to do that or not. And the photographers I like the best are in the or not category. So you go for something a little bit unusual. The Setouchi Matsuyama International Haiku Contest works with photographs. So the photographs are prompts for haiku. And for a couple of years, I've been taking those photographs. So, and that's a great assignment. Can you imagine? You go down to Matsuyama in the summer, take fabulous photographs of the area that will stimulate people to write wonderful haiku. I love that job.
That's a great job. Yeah. What a great way to combine both of your worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we have
So,
a couple more minutes. Anything else you want to talk about that we haven't covered yet?
well,
A
there,
lot?
there, yeah, there's a lot, but I think that I would really like to encourage people to write haiku, to not be afraid of it, that it's really accessible, and the best haiku should be able to be read and written by children. I'd say by age 10, you've got it all together. So I think that's why in Japan anyway, elementary school students are usually required to write it. But for them, it's an enormous headache. 575, everybody has to do it, so nobody likes to do it, except for a couple of nerds, I suppose. But for us, it's fairly novel and it's fun to give it a try. So if you get some haiku that you're interested in, submit it to a contest or send it to me. Enter my contest, which, pretty much the chances are high that you'll win. It's a small contest. So, and 7 prizes. Come on. Yeah, good odds. Give it a shot. And I'm looking forward, Joy, to your haiku.
Yes, I'm going to try. I'm going to
Okay.
try. My kids are very crafty. I'm going to ask them to enter. We're all going to enter.
Excellent. Thank you so much. I can't wait to read. Thank you.
Oh,
Wow.
now the pressure's on.
Yeah. Now, if I don't find these there, you know.
I'm just glad you didn't ask me to make a haiku as we are live. And I have not asked you to make one while we're live either. But is that something that just popped in your head while we were doing the live stream?
No, no,
No.
no, no. My mind is racing just to keep
Okay,
what
okay.
2 steps behind you.
I didn't want to, not have it if it was there because you said sometimes it just comes. Um,
I think the White Eye poem is about you, so
oh,
we'll just go with that.
I love
Upside
that.
down with joy.
I love that, especially with my new glasses.
It's
Mike says, inspired to keep finding the extraordinary within the ordinary. Thank you, Mike.
um, that's a lovely comment. Thank you so much.
It is.
Wow.
And
Wow.
a great way to end. That is our hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful. Hope to see you again soon.
I hope so, and I hope we can meet in person someday and
Definitely. I'm in your direction.
walk around the back streets together. I would love that.
I would love that as well. You have to be my guide then.
In Tokyo, you can be my guide, and then you can come to Hiroshima. I'll be your guide.
You know, I went to Hiroshima to take pictures for one of those contests, and it was way too short. I wanted to spend a great deal more time there. What a beautiful area you live in.
Oh, thank you. I think so.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot more than people give it credit for. A lot of people just pop in and out to Peace Park, but no, there's a lot to
Yeah.
explore. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much
So
for joining, everyone. Thank you for your questions and comments. And please join us again tomorrow morning. We're talking about renovating an old Japanese house to be comfortable to live in.
who
Yeah.
is that?
That
Who is it?
is Paul Friedel. He was
Oh, wonderful.
featured by CNN. Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So
I did see that.
very
What an
exciting.
amazing house that is.
Can't
Wow.
can't wait to talk about it. Thank you, everybody, and have a good night. Thank you so much, Kit.
Thank
Have a good
you,
night,
Joy. Thank
everybody.
you.
Bye.